You're listening to This Magical Life, a podcast dedicated to exploring the depths of spirituality and personal growth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Magical Life. I'm Philip Carr-Gomm, and I have a very special guest with me today, the wonderfully named Tiffany Lazic. It's a great name. Hi, Tiffany. Welcome. Where are you? I know you're Canadian, but where are you living now?
I'm in Wales.
Where in Wales?
So I'm on Anglesey.
Oh, gosh. Oh, well.
Yeah. And pretty much I'm the north end of Anglesey. So, if I drive for 5 minutes, I'm on my way to Ireland.
How fantastic. So on the sacred Isle of the Druids.
Yeah.
Yeah, how wonderful. How wonderful. Maybe we'll get to talking about that in a bit. But what I want to talk to you about today is your wonderful book that's just come out, which is called Psychopomps and the Soul, Traversing Death and Life for Healing and Wholeness. Such an important topic. And I absolutely loved reading the book. You're a psychotherapist, but you're also deeply steeped in a spiritual perspective. You've taught that. You've written a number of books. You're also steeped in the Eightfold Wheel of the Year, a beloved system to myself and to many people who will be watching this. You're in this very special position of talking about this topic with these particular perspectives and understandings. And there's a piece that I found in your book, which if you wouldn't mind me reading, I think that will just give people an instant feel for this book, which takes us straight in. Psychopomps and the Soul was born in a time of darkness. It gathered its first bones during the time of the global pandemic and grew its muscle and sinew during a time of deep personal crisis and sorrow. Its genesis very much echoed its subject matter, slowly emerging step by painful step until it finally crested the threshold into the light of day. The process of that emergence was deeply informed by my own private journey, something I could not have known when I started writing. I had no inkling of what lay ahead, but what I did see was a proliferation of anxiety. I saw an explosion of people feeling lost and scared. I heard anger and suspicion towards those who had previously been counted as trusted companions and loved ones. Certainly there were strains of hope that could be heard through the din of anxiety, but at times it felt very dark indeed. And then you go on and, gosh, I'll just end up reading the whole book. Your mom and your brother and your father had all died, hadn't they?
They
And
did.
you came up with this wonderful phrase, the accidental psychopomp, which I just love because your book really goes into psychopomps in great detail, and you tease out the different sort of kinds of psychopomps that you've identified, and you dive into a kind of exploration of what does this actually mean, and is there a way we can understand it in the modern world, and how does this relate to psychotherapy and shamanism and all this sort of stuff. So it's fantastic. And one of the ideas you present is the accidental psychopomp. And by that, it means suddenly a loved one is dying and you're sitting by their bed. And that's happened to so many of us. It's certainly happened to me on a number of occasions with my mom, my sister.
Oh my goodness.
So I know exactly what you mean. But then you were struck by this awful tragedy of your own son committing suicide.
Yeah.
And I interviewed Zoe Strickland, who's written a wonderful book about this, which she's illustrated. She uses illustrations, images that she drew to illustrate her journey about grief in this series a couple of months ago. We know a number of mothers and fathers who've lost their, particularly sons. I'm not sure I know anybody who's lost a daughter through suicide, but certainly sons. About 5 or 6 people we know. You go on to talk in your book, I had taught and counseled around this material for 3 decades, writing about the psychological dark. And meanwhile, you were helping your son Connor to go through his own dark night of the soul. It was painful, confusing, and terrifying to witness, and it required constant vigilance and acute discernment. I was moving through the liminal while writing about the liminal. Or so I thought. But then suddenly and shockingly, I fell into the darkest of the dark myself. died. And in the 3 weeks following Connor's death, I drew upon everything I had learned from my own research to do what I could to hopefully ease Connor's passage from this realm to the next. There's that moment when you learn of anybody's death, like, what do I do? Especially for those of us who have been working spiritually, who believe in other dimensions and life beyond death and all the rest of it. Suddenly we feel this onus on ourselves to do something. If you're a complete reductionist materialist and you think that's it, there's no sense that you can do anything in your consciousness because the person's gone. But for those of us who do believe this, then there's immediately, oh, what can I do? And this is what you evoke so well. What can I do to ease his passage from this realm to the next? This was not a conscious thought, it just flowed. All the sections on the books of the dead and Psychopomps, all that had been written long before, I leaned on and referred to in order to help guide me through the first of those terrible, unbelievable days. I was so grateful to have all that information in my awareness. Never would I have guessed I would need to access it so soon and for such a devastatingly tragic reason. Somehow, even in the numb haze of grief, I was able to reach for the guides and the maps that were exactly what I needed, what I sensed he needed. Somehow, I was able to access my own Book of the Dead. What powerful writing. It strikes me, it's so beautifully written and so strong and so immediately relatable for anyone watching or listening to this. We've got right to the heart of the matter, which is we're all going to walk through that doorway at one point or another. And people we love walk through the doorway unexpectedly and sometimes tragically. And this is something that we have to face. And you have provided a way of understanding this and looking at it, which is so helpful.
Well, it's interesting because I'm being dropped into the liminal. I'm
Mm.
oddly in the interview, but I feel like part of me is reliving all those moments of you're reading the words, and I don't remember. It's not the writing of the words. I remember being in the experience that evoked the words in the first place. It's hard sometimes even to describe that. Like, I don't know if I can convey how much I did not want to write this book. Right?
Yeah.
Like, at the beginning, of course I did, because it was like, "Oh, this is what I would like to say," because of having gone through what I went through with it was mom, and then 3 years later, it was dad, and then 6 years later, it was my brother, and
Mm.
with mom, it was beautiful, the way that it happened, just because it was over Christmas and the whole family was there, and then she just really plummeted, and so we all stayed there, and it was like just holding this space. I felt like I wrote this piece once about that we were just circling into the center of the labyrinth that has a family, and the center, when we finally got to the center, that was the moment that, and nothing existed except for her dying.
Mm. Mm.
And then she died.
Yeah.
And then slowly we had to all come out of the labyrinth again as a family, like reemerge. And it was shocking because what you know in your head is not the same as embodied experience.
Mm.
And I think that's when I really recognized. I remember at one point sitting with, because we were there 24 hours, like constant vigil, but we couldn't stay up 24 hours. So we did have a personal support worker who came in. And I remember sitting with her and I was showing her scrapbooks
Mm.
of mom's life, because it's that you don't know who you're sitting with, and you need to know who you're sitting with, right?
Mm.
Like, she was very professional, but it was this heart connection
Yeah.
saying. And so by the time of I had a bit more of awareness with my dad, and then with my brother, it felt like a different thing. That's when I was like, oh, this is the accidental psychopomp. What I ended up doing, which really was like calling otherworldly beings, other energies to come in to facilitate that process on this side, and then like handing him over on. But with Connor, it was oddly shocking and not shocking, right? When you're dealing with somebody who's struggling with addiction and mental illness, and there's so much of that. There
Mm.
was so much of that even though I was grateful, I thought, oh, the reason why, because I'd written half the book
Mm.
by the time that happened. and all the part about the books of the dead and the psychopomps and all of that. And so I could actively draw upon it. And then as far as I was concerned, it was done because the book that I thought that I was writing,
Hmm.
which was ultimately then to be this, like, how do you get through the dark? In truth, I was writing it for him,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he
It's
was
almost like you're
gone.
writing that manual to prepare yourself to do this work. And
That's what it ended up being. When I
yeah.
was writing it, I thought I was writing it as a manual for him to know how to get out of the dark.
Yes, because you, as a psychotherapist, you explore this interesting process that we think of the work of the psychopomp as the work of the guide of the souls. The psychopomp is a being on the other side who you might have a death doula, or you've got people who companion you on the journey prior to actually physically dying. And then you have the psychopomp, which is a figure on the other side who escorts you, helps you on the other side. But there's this very interesting process of how people have deaths whilst they're still incarnated. People get
Yeah.
trapped in hell while they're still alive. People, that the guide leading you from the darkness into the light, however we want to talk about it, is a process that, in a sense, can be happening in shamanism. It can be happening in psychotherapy. And that's a very interesting insight, I think.
Yeah, I found myself, like, even years before all of this,
Mm.
I would laughingly introduce myself as a psychopomp. "What's the work you do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a psychopomp." "Oh, what I mean is a psychotherapist." Again, I say is I'm sure you're familiar, so nobody calls me when they're having a good day.
Yes, that's right.
It's just not the work that we do.
Fabulous. Can I book a session? Yes, that's right.
And so it's like every day, every session is stepping into the dark with someone and just trying to find the thread to, it's not always coming back into the light, but at least finding something of an inkling of a path
Yeah.
to be able to continue to step forward with hope.
And tell me, or share with us the way you looked, the concept of the psychopomp. And you've made this very interesting distinction between kinds of psychopomps.
I
Let's,
know.
yeah, yes, take through that. Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is one of those things where I feel with one of my earlier books, I had someone ask me, like, "Did you channel this book?" And I'm like, "Oh, believe me, no, I did not." It's like I fought for every single word.
Yeah.
I wonder sometime about this, though.
Hmm.
Not that it was channeled, but that I don't know. I was just interested in it. It is a little bit Joseph Campbell, comparative mythology. Okay, if it shows up in this culture, then it shows up in this culture. Like, these are similar archetypal energies that show up in all of these different places. So I was interested in just searching them out. My parents were classics teachers, Latin, Greek, ancient history, Egyptian, like that's what our house was. So that's what I was versed in. They'd already gone through their own religious disillusionment by the time I was born.
You make this, you've got this sort of second section, you talk about embracing the grays, presenting 7 different categories of psychopomp: the passage guides, the threshold keepers, the gatherers, the rescuers, the visitors, the comforters, the harbingers. And it seems to me one of the mistakes that we make is we desperately want to understand life and things, and we think we latch onto something like, oh, she's a psychotherapist. I know what a psychotherapist is. Meet a CBT clinical psychologist, meet a Freudian analyst, you're going to have a very different experience with all of them. It's virtually everything in this world. When you start to look at it, you find that there's lots of what exactly do you mean by it? And you've done the same thing with psychopomps. You've separated out these different kind of roles almost that psychopomps fulfill, yeah?
Yeah, because as I was saying, there were many of them. Anubis was just part of my childhood. I was such familiarity with that. And I would say, even looking at things like Gwyneth Neath, like years of having, but when I started to open up and expand into looking at all the different cultures, it just became evident. And they don't work the same way. They're not all serving the same function. And so it's like, we can't just call them all the psychopomps. And that's when I started to really work with them individually to get a sense of, almost the different flavor of the function. And that's when it became very clear. And then in fact, there's two. I would say the comforters, I do say this in the book, the comforters and the harbingers, I'm not even so sure. They're psychopomps.
Right.
Not really,
That they're doing something
but
slightly different. Yeah.
slightly different. But I include them because I think it's really important.
Yes, it's like that spectrum you present reminded me of the kind of the health services where you'll have pediatricians and physiotherapists and a whole range of different professions which are loosely categorized together as they're all looking after your health. But let me ask you, what's the difference, if there is one, between a psychopomp and an inner guide that somebody might have?
I think it's that psychopomps are inner guides. I would say all psychopomps are inner guides, but not all inner guides necessarily are psychopomps. If we're defining a psychopomp as specifically having a relationship with the dark, because I
Okay.
think there's a lot of guides, and I have a tendency, and this might be foraying into a different realm, but even when I use the language of a spirit guide or an angel guide, I use them differently, like an
Mm,
ancestor guide. So again, it can be some very nuanced, but the psychopomps specifically are comfortable in the most uncomfortable places.
okay. And their relationship with the dark. Like before we hit the record button, we were joking that somehow we couldn't get your lighting brighter. You and I'm pretty bright because of the lighting here.
Yeah, there it is.
There it's yeah. So let's dive in. I'm aware that in this interview we haven't started off by defining psychopomp and all the rest of it, but in a way, I like it when we dive straight into topics and people can work backwards from that. If you don't know what a psychopomp is, look it up
We
and
can
stuff.
Google.
Yeah, that's right. But this relationship with the dark. So if I understood you correctly, you were saying like an inner guide might be a being on another level of consciousness whose goal is to inspire you, to maybe gift you with healing or some creative ability or something like that. And their agenda isn't to help you negotiate the darkness in the sense of isn't to help you sit in painful places or to go through deeply challenging experiences and to go through the kind of transformation that exists there in potential. It's almost like they've got a different role. Would you say is that a
I
fair
would, yeah. The way
analysis?
that it's coming up was you were talking, I was thinking, for me, I consider the bee, a bumblebee,
Mm,
as a guide. I also consider the spider a guide. I am not fond of spiders at
mm,
all. That's like a shadow teacher for me.
right. Yeah.
And it reflects to me all the things that I'm not willing to embrace or whatever it is. But the
Mm,
bee, oh, love the bee. I'll work with the bee 24 hours a day. Love the
mm,
bee. And not to say that working with the bee doesn't move me into from a place of resistance or unclaimed into, my truth. It can do that as well, but the experience of it is very different. It's similar with dreams. That we have these extraordinary dreams, those dreams where it's it just you wake up just feeling like you're glowing with hope and self-knowledge and purpose. Like it's just but they're no different than nightmares.
mm,
Nightmares are doing exactly the same thing, but from the opposite side. They are showing you what perhaps what in you is keeping that light behind, what needs to be addressed, what needs to be explored, what needs to be released. So there's both talking that super conscious,
no, well, that's
unconscious.
I was thinking the underworld and the superconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zeus is not Hades, so they can.
Yeah, so you're talking about this journey into the underworld, if you like, that the psychopomp invites us into. And here's another quote from your book, which I think says it very well, because here's the thing. This is what the psychopomps teach us. Once you have been in the dark, if you are able to go to that place, to the underworld, to the other world, and see the wonders that are there, and then come back, then you are forever changed. You are forever changed. We come to realize that the dark does not define us. The dark is a place that we can sometimes visit in order to retrieve the treasure. And that reminds me, I've been involved the last 5 years in the work of psychedelic therapy. And Dr. Rosalind Watts, who I trained with and worked with, has developed a sort of wonderful exercise where she basically takes people in a visualization as a preparation for the psychedelic journey of diving down to the kind of the bottom of the sea and finding an oyster and then finding the pearl in the oyster, somehow bringing it up. And this is a sort of similar idea. And as I was reading your piece there, I had this sort of thing of going into that often difficult place of the darkness. And then this little kind of diamond, this treasure in a chest almost that you can redeem. And I remember when I did my psychosynthesis training, there's a beautiful sort of concept where we took the phrase in the Bible, the stone which has been rejected shall be the cornerstone of the temple, which is just like when it hits you, that it's just so beautiful. It's that. And you talk in your book about shame and the way shame kind of layers and covers up. And you must find that in your work with clients.
I have increasingly found myself referring to myself as a one-trick pony because I feel like all I talk about is shame. Like it all comes down to that. And I remember hearing an interview with a doctor a Canadian who working in these realms and worked a lot in addiction. And one of the things that he said was that in his work, he's recognizing that he's looking past the addiction to the trauma that is behind the addiction.
Yeah.
And I remember I heard that because that's very much, it feels like that's the work, right? Of psychotherapy as well, is going through that dark. But when I was listening to him, I thought, I'm not sure that's what I do. I think that's the first thing of what I do. But actually, in truth, I'm looking past the trauma to see the truth of the person that existed before the trauma even happened.
Yeah.
And that is exactly that's the pearl, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we do sometimes have a tendency to stop at the trauma.
Yeah.
And it's important. So first of all, it's terrifying to even think about talking about the thing that almost destroyed us. And so I feel that the psychopomps are, however it is that we're working with tangibly, metaphorically, symbolically, practically with meditation. However, but they are a presence that will help us to be able to go into the dark, to look at the thing that we are most afraid of looking at. But that's not the purpose of the journey.
Yeah. It's to go beyond.
The purpose of the journey is to be able to go past that, to find the light and to bring that back.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Indeed.
And that's what I lost when my son died. I knew it in my head,
but you could.
I'm sorry, but just
yeah.
And I will say that this thing that really helped, and I don't go into this in the book at all, that's a whole other thing, was Anglesey coming here.
Say more about that.
That when I just didn't know what tethered me, then I went to the ancient sites.
Yeah.
I lay in Bryn Celli Ddu. I stood by Llyn, why am I going to say Tegaden? It's not, but the one with it's right down the street from me and I'm blanking on it. Oh, Kagbach, Llyn Kagbach, where all the votive offerings were. Like I went, you can't go anywhere on Anglesey without tripping over some ancient site.
And of course, it's a site of trauma, if you like, but
it is.
Yeah, but beneath that, of course, it's a holy island. It's a sacred island of the Druids. And
that's it. It's a healing island. I now live 15 minutes away from so many sites, but one of them is the Breth Bronwyn, that cracked stone. Yeah. So I went there and sobbed and sobbed. There's a St. Gwenfine. And then I found that she's the patron saint of mental health. So now I go there all the time and leave
And then
flowers
all
for
the time,
her and
and
pray for people who are struggling with mental health issues.
that's beautiful, and it illustrates beautifully in a very concrete way, the power of the land and the way that it's like psychotherapy on its own isn't enough. Or maybe I'm
Right.
overstating that, but what I mean, it can help.
No,
But do you know what I'm trying to say? Is that actually this how can we get some land and nature-based spirituality plus psychotherapy? Then you've got a formula.
yeah.
Something like that?
And it's
Yeah.
so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think though it's because the world has changed as well. When I was writing the introduction to Psychopomps and the Soul, and I was saying this book was born, and it was in a global pandemic,
Mm,
certainly my generation,
mm,
we never experienced anything like that. Not we didn't go through the Spanish flu. So
yeah.
this was like the worst thing that could
Mm,
ever have happened. And it was traumatizing on a global scale,
yeah,
but
yeah.
we're still being traumatized. We're
Exactly. I
still being
remember
traumatized.
yeah. No sooner had the pandemic ended than Russia invaded Ukraine. I
That's right.
remember being in Ireland at the time and watching the television and just thinking, yeah, this was just too awful. And
Yeah.
then Gaza and yeah,
Well,
absolutely. And so what we've been talking about tragedies, individual and collective, and then suggesting an inner experience. And that's in a way what psychopomps do is they make this bridge through the dark.
no, it's fine. Because actually, what I would love to do, because I think in truth, it does come back to this idea that, and perhaps where psychotherapy has been challenged, and I've seen the shifts and the changes in this field, and where there's even more of a push towards the cognitive. If I change what I think, then things are going to change. And I think that's where we're finding there are limitations to that.
Yeah.
So the exploration into the psychedelics, the exploration into how can I expand the consciousness so that it's something which is embodied? It's something which is expansive. It's not just what I think. It's more because we need to come back. And ultimately, I'd say this isn't a book about the dark. It's a book about wonder. It is about finding that light. And so I'd like to start a
Hmm.
little meditation
Yeah.
with the poem that actually ends the book,
Mhm.
and then guide. Okay. I will invite who's listening just to close their eyes. To start to, with breath, move from all the words. There's sometimes so many words, and drop into that inner experience. It's always about bringing the awareness down into the torso, into the solar plexus, into the heart, and just allowing the words to flow over you. And this is a poem that I wrote so many years ago. One of those, the words just came through. And it is called Remember Who You Are. In the stumbling through a gaping abyss, when the light that beacons reveals itself to be the stark reflection of the whites of your eyes, remember who you are. Not the disease that burrows into the corner of a once vibrant body. Not the duty that weighs onto line after line of incessant list. Not the hands of the abuser, nor the words of the accuser, nor the thrust of rejection, the pull of dejection, the curse of projection. You are nothing less than the dewdrop on the parched leaf, the iridescence on a starling's wing, the bluebell hearkening of spring. And though you are the whites of your eyes, you are also undeniably, irrevocably, inestimably the flecks of gold in the iris. So allow yourself to hold those energies, the whites, which can be that reflection of the fear, the wide-eyed, what we become encrusted in trauma or pain. And just take a moment, gently, to allow yourself to feel how the whites of your eyes shows up in your remembrance of experiences, how it's carried in your body, how it sits in your heart. Though there are many psychopomps that can come to be of assistance, to offer a hand, to shine a light, there is one for today. In truth, the one that starts the whole journey in the book. And that is Anubis. There are many places in Psychopomps where the dogs are the ones who guide, whether it is a dog-headed god or the barking of the Kunanun with their white and red flashed ears. But as you breathe into this place in your heart, and aware of where that white may gleam, allow yourself to imagine that there is this figure, whether it is Anubis, the jackal-headed, or the shape of a dog that guides unerringly along a path. Allow yourself to be guided. Anubis takes the newly departed souls to Nat, the goddess of justice, not rights and wrongs, but just how the rhythm and the harmony of the cosmos itself. And there is this sense of we lay our heart on those scales next to a feather, and our hearts need to be as light as that feather. The heaviness that we carry, or the sharpness of the experiences, or the shame of who we are not, or the things that we have done, whatever carries the weightiness that needs to be released, what brings that sharp whiteness of the fear in our eyes. So as you walk, as you are led through whatever those paths of tangled woods or darkness and shadow, be aware of a shift with each step in the heart of what may need to be let go on the path, left by the side, sometimes dropped, sometimes dumped, sometimes placed with acknowledgement, reverence. These experiences that may have been so hard, but we can also honor how they have shaped us, what they have brought into relief, what of the gold, once we are able to shine that light, not the fear, but the light, that it starts to gleam once more. And find yourself guidance through this path, this tangled wood, this darkness. Being led towards the light of gold, dawn. Be aware of how your heart feels as you come more and more into this soft golden light. And you see those scales. You see the feather. You see the waiting tray of the one side. And as Anubis steps behind, feel your heart as glowing gold. And imagine it placed on that scale beside the feather of what it feels like to return to that place of lightness, so that the white, the beautiful ostrich feather, not the fear of the whites of the eyes, and the gold is that invitation for the dawn that invites, that is carried in the energy of hope and wonder. And that presence of Anubis, who I always see as being quite regal, reflects so deeply the message that you are not defined by the things that have happened. You are not the path that you traverse. You are the light that shines in your heart. You are the gold in the flecks of your iris that brings that perspective to all you see and opens up the potential to be able to see the wonder. There is challenge, surely, but there is also that light of spirit, the wonder that threads through as well. So breathe that into your heart. I tend to like to say, breathe it into every single cell. Allow the remembrance of that gold to be activated in every corner of your being. Feel what that feels like in your body. Then take 3 deep centering breaths. Tend to like to end with your hands on your heart. That anchors it physically in your body as well. And when you're ready, open up your eyes.
Tiffany, thank you so much. That was really lovely. Very beautiful.
It's interesting, that whole, you can really do that with all of the psychopomps, and the journeys are very different. I sometimes have, for about a year, I guided a meditation, and there's one in the book as well that sort of recognizes the different landscapes that they come to us from,
Mm,
and the
mm.
different ways that they guide us through those landscapes as well. Now that I think about it, I should really have probably done Meninic Lear. There's coming over the water and guiding over the ninth wave. Would have been perhaps a little more appropriate.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many, just that they respond to us in very different ways. They invite us in very different ways.
Isn't
Yeah.
life rich and wonderful that there's such richness and variety in the inner world as in the outer world, in our psyche, as in our bodies and in our hearts and minds. That's what I'm left with. I'm left with this kind of warm glow of the richness of life and of consciousness. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tiffany. We'll put in the notes. Your website is just yourname.com, isn't it?
Justmyname.com.
Yeah. And you've got courses and books, and so people will be able to follow up on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so thank you so much for coming on. And I look forward to one day, perhaps us meeting, perhaps on Anglesey. That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Wow, that would be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. I am convinced. I know our paths are going to cross because we just intersect in so many different ways. So I'm sure. And I will say as well, I do want to say, one of the things that I've been recognizing is that, so even if people want to, I have an email address that's on my website, because I know just sharing their stories as well, particularly people who have lost loved ones, particularly to suicide. One of the things that I did, because there were, I lost my Connor, and then met another woman who lost her son Connor, and then another friend of mine lost her son Connor. Like, it's just, so I planted 3 Bardsey apple trees in our yard.
Yeah.
And now other stories are coming. And so I'm planting flowers and I'm feeding hedgehogs and all of the things that are just holding that space for people who have lost loved ones.
And it is a lovely gesture of hope and of grounding to plant a tree, actually, for someone who's died. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe, share, and join me next time for more inspiration.